If everybody could put in the chat any type of question you envision that you would get answered tonight in regards to cop watching. If you had anything in mind, that you knew that you came into the space wanting to learn tonight. And if you can, I accept the private comments that have already been given, but if you can make them public, which is okay, there's no judgments here. That's so that I can get the help that I need to make sure that I answer all the questions. And as we go through this, if you have questions, feel free to put them in here. You don't have to do it right this second. You could do it as we're going through if something pops up in your brain as we're learning tonight. And just, just for a disclaimer, my training spaces, I am not, y'all are my peers. I am just sharing information with you. It is very lax in this space. I just want to give my community information that I feel like they need to have. And so that's how we'll be. I'm not gonna, yeah, it's gonna be very lax tonight. Um, and we're just gonna go through information. I'm gonna provide you what I know. If I don't know something that you wanna know the answer to and it pertains to this, then I'm gonna try to find the answer for you and try to get it to you, just so that you could have what you need. Another disclaimer, this is gonna go through some general information, but I want everybody to keep in mind that we may talk about like laws and rights and um, how you should be treated and what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do, but that does not mean that all of that is insured. When you're out there in the streets, especially if you're black or brown, um, say you're walking and a cop asks to see your ID. Legally you don't have to show your ID because you're walking and you're not driving, but being black and brown especially, a lot of times saying no, I don't have to show you my ID might get you killed. So I want everybody to keep that in mind, that do what feels best in the moment to keep you alive and keep you safe. Let's see. The links that I provided, if you scroll up, one of them is the history of policing, and it goes back to the beginning of this country, what the police were used for in various ways and in various regions. You can compare it to now and see a lot of similarities. Another one is a BLM Sacramento Know Your Rights handbook that we worked on with the ACLU of Northern California. It's really helpful. It has pictures of what badges look like, not badges, how you can identify whether it's SAC PD, SAC sheriff, or whoever it is that you're interacting with in Sacramento that's law enforcement. There's also an infographic on calling the police or not calling the police. More accurately, that's what it should be called. There's also the SAC PD organizational chart, just so you can know within the department what teams they have, where they're located. Um, Find out. We're going to talk about two of the teams that disproportionately their whole existence is to racially profile Black folks and brown folks. So we'll talk about those two teams. They're mostly in Black and brown predominant neighborhoods. So you'll learn about those teams tonight. There's also the SAC Sheriff organizational chart. And then there's a SAC PD use of force graphic. Yeah. So those are the links that I shared. Feel free to put questions in as we go if you want. At the end of this, I'll try to make sure that I've answered your questions. And if not, I'll find a way to get to the answers. Unless I know absolutely I can't, then I'll tell you who could probably answer. But we're going to go ahead and get started. So the two teams that are within the police, I'm going to go over this first really quick. There's two teams that are within the police department that exist to specifically racially profile. Is if we're talking about SAC PD, and this is going to be specific to Sacramento because I'm not an expert on officers and or departments and agencies in other places, but if it's SAC PD, it's the gang enforcement team. So their sole purpose is to go into Black and brown neighborhoods, racially profile Black and brown people, and get them into our system, get them in the system, even if they're not in a gang. I mean, we've seen the Proud Boys in the streets over the last couple of weeks. They do not investigate those folks, and those folks are a gang and they are terrorists. They don't They don't go to white folks that sag their pants or have fake locks. I'm gonna call them fake locks because they're mats, but they don't go into those spaces and police those people. It's specifically to police brown and black folks. And a lot of times it's in neighborhoods that um, are in the process of being gentrified. So it's to accommodate residents that are white, and make them more comfortable in spaces that are predominantly black. So the other team is the POP team. It stands for problem oriented policing. Just the name of that group is problematic because they say that and then they go into black and brown neighborhoods. So they're basically calling our neighborhoods the problem and that they need to be in those spaces. So those are two internal departments of our local law enforcement agencies that are specifically created to profile us. So when you cop watch in an area like Oak Park or Meadowview or Valley High or El Paso Heights, 9 times out of 10, if you're cop watching a young black man, the people that are arresting him or detaining him are people from those teams. They are deep in those areas and they usually are white men in police uniforms dealing with black young men. And yeah, it's a complete disconnect, but that's their purpose. So the goal of cop watching, I just want to kind of define that a little bit right now. We're not there to catch an officer do something wrong. The goal is to make sure that they don't do anything wrong. So a lot of times I'll post a video of me cop watching and somebody will come and say, they didn't even do anything. You're just trying to get, your 5 minutes of fame, yada, yada, yada. It's like, well, we don't want them to do anything. We don't want them to hurt anybody. We don't want them to take anybody from us. We don't want them to do things the wrong way. We want them to do it the right way. And that's why we watch. That's why we ensure that we can, that we're watching them, that they know that we're watching them. We're not doing it from far away. We're doing it right there so that they know people are watching you do your job right. And that's the goal. So when that happens, that is a win. If you guys hear my cats yelling or crying or anything, or maybe sneezing, I might mute. If they start sneezing, I might mute it because that sometimes lasts a long time. And it's consistent. Nicole's face, because she knows the sneeze is very real with the cat. It's not a joke, but just a heads up, because my cat just howled. So, she's got food, she's good. Okay, so I'm gonna go into the training. Knowing your basic rights. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 amendments in our Constitution that give us the right to watch the police, that ensure us the right to watch law enforcement when they're interacting with the community. The first one is your First Amendment right. Like you have the right to assemble. You have the right to stand there on a sidewalk with your camera out, looking at people that are public servants that get paid by us to do the work that they're doing. The Second Amendment is a Fourth Amendment right, or Fourth Amendment is protection against unreasonable search and seizure. So this is more in line with you watching people that are being detained and them having the right to not be searched if they have not given permission or without a warrant. The Fifth Amendment is protection against self-incrimination. So that's basically ensuring that someone is not accused of something that they're not doing and having proof to provide that by watching them. So if I get pulled over and they search my car and then all of a sudden I get arrested and nobody knows why, and they might say, oh, I had, they'll make up reasons to pull you over and then say that it happened, and then it's just the truth because they're police officers. So if you're there watching somebody and you're documenting it, then that could be proof to help somebody out if they've been accused of something that they didn't do. The next one is the Sixth Amendment. And this is if you've been arrested for whatever reason, whether you're watching or not. You have the right to a speedy and public trial, and you have the right to an attorney. I think this is important because people will not know that this is available to them, and they will be gaslit by law enforcement that they have to do certain things certain ways and be told that they don't have these rights. And sometimes the whole system will stand behind whatever's been told to them. I know there's been instances where people get locked up and they've requested a speedy trial and they've been told that they can't have it even though they can. And then they end up being in jail without a trial for like over a year. And that's just horrible. And I've heard stories of that like numerous times. There was actually a 15-year-old boy that was accused of murdering somebody, and the DA wanted to wait until he was 18 as an adult to try him. So they literally kept him in juvenile hall until that before they gave him a court date. And what ended up happening is a law passed through our initiatives to not try someone as an adult when they've been incarcerated as a child, and it passed right before his court date. So luckily he did not get tried as an adult. But like these things happen, they're not uncommon. So it's important to know that. The last is the Eighth Amendment, protection from excessive bail and cruel and unusual punishment. This is so common. Excessive bail is extremely common. You will see someone in there for something that's not violent and they'll have $1 million bail just because maybe the police might have been watching them and wanting to catch them in something. I know quite a few folks that have gotten locked up for things and they're in the jail and their bail is so ridiculous that they cannot bail out. And their charges are nonviolent charges. Or there's sometimes where the charges are double charges because they have sections for charges. So someone might be charged for the same thing twice in different sections, and that's not right either, but it's excessive. So that happens. All right, so now moving on past our amendments. So there are 3 types of stops. The first stop is considered consensual. It is where you are maybe being pulled over or pulled to the side and the officer is talking with you. You have not been detained. You're not in cuffs. You're not sat down on a curb. You're not sat in the back of a police car. And you have the right always to ask, am I free to go? You don't have to answer information that is completely irrelevant. A lot of times police officers will start conversations with you that are irrelevant to what's going on just to build rapport with you. But anything that you say could be used against you. So I'd advise you not to engage in those types of discussions. I know that when we're out in protests and the police say stuff like, oh, it's pretty outside today, I just will glare at them sometimes, like, I'm not going to talk to you. Just because it usually leads into a conversation to where they can trigger you and get you upset, and then you respond in a way that they wanted you to respond, and then at that point you're in trouble. And they do that. They try to dupe you. They try to lure you into doing something that you're not supposed to do, or into being angry and reacting out of anger, to where they are arguing and then they're saying, okay, you're assaulting a police officer at this point, when you may not have. It might have just started off as the sky is beautiful today. So either way, if it's a consensual stop, if you've been pulled over and you've pulled over consensually and they're talking to you, you can always ask, am I free to go? I advise you to ask, am I free to go? Whatever they got to do, if they're going to ticket you or whatever, if they have any concerns that they can actually put some weight behind, get that over with, get it done, and then am I free to go? The next type of stop is detention. So when you have been detained. Being detained is not being arrested, but it does feel like you're about to be arrested. A lot of times, I'll give an example. A couple months ago, I cop watched. It was 3 young Black men being pulled over on Meadowview Road. I had just left one of our actions, and it looked like a regular traffic stop. And so I didn't think I was going to be there long, but I pulled up into the church parking lot and I got out of my car and I watched. I was kind of at a distance, but I was visible. And then I didn't hear any of the conversation, but I saw that they took the driver out of the car and they put him in the back seat of their car and they cuffed him. And so at that point, I walked down to the end of the block. I crossed the street and got very visible and way closer so I could hear what was being said. Because it did really look just like a traffic stop. It didn't look like anything more than that. And by the time I got to the car, all of the people in the car, so the 2 other young men were sitting on the sidewalk. They were not cuffed, but they weren't allowed to stay in the car anymore. The officers looked like they were going to try to start searching the car. And then I got there and then they said, "Hi, Tanya." And so at that point, they let the young man out of the car, out of the back of the car. They took the cuffs off of him and they let the other guys, they took them, they said they could stand up now. You don't have to sit at the sidewalk anymore. And so once they had left, I'd asked the young man what he was pulled over for. And he said for expired tags on his car. So that is a traffic stop and it does not require detaining. He didn't have a warrant or anything. And when the cops left, they told him, "You can't drive this car because it had expired tags. Got to find a way to get it." They lived across the street. They said they're going to drive it anyway because they live right there. But either way, the officers were pulling them over and doing too much. They shouldn't have detained him. But that's what a detainment was. They were looking for a reason to arrest him. And so that's why they put him in the back of the car. They thought that they could end up searching it. And then I pulled up watching. So they knew that they couldn't do an illegal search at that point. And then they ended up letting them go because what they did, I've been pulled over for expired tags in the past, and I've never been detained or arrested. So usually they give you a fix-it ticket and they send you off. And you need to get your tags by a certain date and show up in court with proof of that. That's the normal procedure. So that is a detainment. Sometimes they're valid, sometimes they're not. The next type of stop is an arrest. So when you are being put in cuffs and they tell you that you're being taken to jail, you are being arrested. It's usually based on probable cause, which is actual evidence. This could be in the form of a citation or custody. You have the right to know why you're being arrested, and you have the right to appear before a judge. Just to go back to the detention, there is a search clause. You could be searched, but they cannot go into your pockets. So when you're being detained, they can pat the outside of you, but they cannot go into your pockets. They cannot go into your socks, none of that, because that's considered a frisk, or I'm sorry, that's a deeper search. But if you're a parolee, then they have the right to violate that as well. And I call it a violation, but legally it is not a violation, but it is a violation of your human rights, I think. But when you're on parole or probation, a lot of times there's a clause in your parole or probation that allows them to search without a warrant. It's good to know too, everybody that is on parole or probation, they should know if that clause is in their case, because sometimes it's not. It's rare that it isn't, but sometimes it's not. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about the 3 types of violations. So the first one is infractions. Infractions are the most minor violations that you could be slammed with. They usually come with a citation and you get fined usually to pay the courts. Does anybody have any example of an infraction?
Speeding.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one. I don't know why I didn't think of that. Okay. Speeding, or even like jaywalking, something minor. The next type of violation is a misdemeanor. And so with misdemeanors, in my experience, I've always been cited and released. But sometimes you can go to jail and be fined for up to a year. And if it's a misdemeanor, then you do not have a right to a jury. Trespassing is a misdemeanor. So if you're an activist and say you want to do some real civil disobedience, you want to shut something down, a city building. So when we shut down City Hall twice, we were cited and released because it was a misdemeanor, a trespassing misdemeanor. And then the third type of violation is a felony. And that's when you are fined and or you go to jail longer than a year. And usually you end up staying at the jail and then being transported to a prison. They can and will try to boost your charges by adding these things to your charges. Like you could have an infraction, they can try to make it like a misdemeanor. And then when you get to the court, they could be like, no, this is an infraction. Or this isn't even a misdemeanor. All these charges are released. Or they could add felonies to misdemeanors just to make it so that you have, and I'm going to be biased in my teaching tonight because I've seen this happen with so many people. Like I see For example, there's a guy named James Nelson. We fought for him in 2017. He is diagnosed with schizophrenia. And in Citrus Heights, he had a schizophrenic episode at a KFC. He had his shirt off. It was in the summertime. They called the police on him, and then the police came and they put him on the hot asphalt while they were arresting him. And the asphalt was like at 140 or something degrees because of the heat outside. And they burned him. And according to his doctors, they burned him, dragged him. So there was scrapes and then more burns. And he had 3rd-degree burns. And so he's still alive and he still communicates with us. But recently he was pulled over by police. He won. He did a lawsuit. He won. They paid him. And recently he got pulled over by police. They found a drug substance on his body, on his pockets, which I think they violated him by searching in his pockets because he was no longer on probation for anything. And they took the drugs out and they put them back in his pocket, and then they brought him to jail, and then they charged him for bringing drugs into a jail facility. So like that's crooked because they could have just taken the drugs and then charged him with the drug charge, but they were able to add another charge by putting those drugs back into his pocket. And then he also after they had put him in jail, the next day they went to his house and searched his house, which he lived with his girlfriend, and she had a gun in that house. And so they charged him for having a gun. They added those charges to his charges, and they added them twice. So he's charged twice for the same thing, which adds years. So they will ramp things up on you if you don't have someone in your corner calling that out, like a good lawyer or something. All right, so the next area is the 3 types of police misconduct. So the first one is when they violate the law, when they literally do something that's illegal. And that's usually corruption, excessive force, beating a child, rape. The second one is violations of policy. So I'll give an example of this with Sac PD. When Stephon Clark was killed, 3 new policies were put in place. And one was the less lethal forms of force, where they're not supposed to shoot to kill on the first, attempt to try to get somebody. The next was the body cam policy. And the next was the no foot pursuit policy. So they're not supposed to chase you around town. And that was March 18th when Stephon Clark was killed. Those policies went into place sometime before September. And then September 6th is when they killed Daryl Richards. And when they killed Daryl Richards, they went in with guns first and shot him and killed him. They chased him. And then their body camera suddenly went off on accident, even though they had a big shield around them. So they violated all 3 policies. We don't know what happened to them or if there was any repercussions, but that's another type of police misconduct, and it happens often. It probably happens more often than the first one. No, probably not. Probably all happens just same amount. The third one is unjust laws. So example is there was a it was a camping ordinance that would make it a no sleep ordinance or no camping ordinance, where you couldn't sleep on the streets or you're not allowed to camp on the streets. And so this impacted a lot of our unhoused people because they didn't have anywhere to sleep. And so it ended up causing them to be criminalized on a regular basis. And then as a result of that, folks took them to court and found it was unconstitutional. So laws were put in place to protect people from those types of laws. And so they're supposed to follow those at this point, especially during COVID right now. We have laws put in place where homeless folks cannot be attacked by police because they don't have a place to isolate. They don't have places to get away from COVID. And so there's a special rule put in place right now that they do not get swept. There's no sweeps. They don't get their items taken away from them. But Sac PD has been doing sweeps probably every day for this last week. I got folks that do homeless advocacy, and there's this one spot where they're always doing a sweep, taking their property, this and that. And so that's another type of police misconduct, because they're not following the rules during COVID. They're not following the constitutional rules that are in place right now to protect our unhoused folks. So that's another way of another type of police misconduct. All right. So your right to watch. So Penal Code 148 is called interfering or obstructing or delaying an officer on duty. So I'm going to give you how it works, and I'm going to give you what realistically happens. How it works is if you're within far enough distance to where you're not in between them and what they're trying to do, then you should be fine. If you're not within arm's distance of being able to grab them or do something while they've got their back turned to you, then you should be fine. The reality is a lot of times they will try to act like you're in the way when you're not. And it's up to you to assess the situation. I am going to give you another disclaimer to do as I say and not as I do. If you've ever watched me cop watch, I press the line. Some people are able to do that, but it's not always safe. I think I'm able to get away with it, and I'm working on it. I think I'm able to get away with it though, because they know I'm going to get some national media attention if something happens to me. So I would advise to be safe for you. But there have been times where my folks have been like, I'm not in the way. I'm standing right here. You're all the way over there. I'm not in your way. I can stand here. And sometimes they'll be like, okay, okay, okay. And they'll leave you alone and they'll continue to do what they're doing. And sometimes they'll be like, if you don't get out of the way, I'm going to arrest you too. So just judge it by what you're getting in that moment and the energy that you're feeling from the police and how they're responding to you if you do decide to press the line on how much further you want to go. But definitely gauge the scenario before just like, and keep in mind too that the decisions that you make also will impact the person that you're watching. So if that person is going to be taken off in a police car and brought to jail, you're not going to be with them in that moment. And if that officer is mad because they were protected by you in a way that might have felt like they were disrespected, then they might take it out on that person when you're not able to watch. The next right to watch is your First Amendment right. So you have the right to be in a public space and watching the people that are getting paid with our tax dollars. You have the right to video is the next one. A couple of years ago, I want to say 2016, Chicago tried to bring that to court and make that something that was illegal throughout the whole country. And it didn't work. So they didn't pass it through. It's unconstitutional for you to violate someone's right for being able to video them. So we're able to video. Nobody could tell you different. I don't know if you've watched videos of the recent protests for George Floyd, but there was an officer that like hit this girl's phone and it landed on the ground hard and it cracked. And luckily NLG, which is the National Lawyers Guild, they caught it on video and they're bringing SAC PD to court over it. But that was a violation of that person's right, because you don't smack somebody's property and break it, but then on top of that, don't do it because you don't want to be videotaped, because she has a right to videotape you. The other right to video highlight is that police have no right or expectation of privacy. They are public servants. So they can't be like, I don't want you to record me because this violates my rights. They are public servants. Here's another one that is often violated. It may seem small, but it's huge. It's Penal Code 830.10. Cops must be identified by name and or badge number. It is very common to ask a cop their name and their badge and them to just stare at you, blatantly stare at you. And at that point, you can make a decision based on gauging the environment and demand, I need to know your name and badge number. You're supposed to do this. This is your job. Give me your name and badge number. Or you could just be like, okay, what I do when I cop watch, I automatically pull my camera out and I try to go live if possible, because that's going to get more viewers and ensure more safety. And it might even get more people out there with me. And then I go when I have the opportunity to, and sometimes I don't get the opportunity if I'm not close enough to, like if they have a yellow tape up and I'm on the outside of the yellow tape. But if I'm able to get up to the officer, or if they walk up to me, I'll say, what is your name and badge number? I'll record it with my video, what they're saying, so that there's sound, and then I'll show it on their name tag, and I'll show their badge number. That's the most successful way to do it. But sometimes you may not get the opportunity to do all that, but you definitely want to try to get as much information as you can. And we'll talk about that more in the next section. But they often will ignore that and like never even tell you. I'm going to give you another website too. It's transparentcalifornia.com. I think it's .com. Hold on. Yeah, it's .com. So this website, a lot of time officers will have their first initial last name. If you have their last name and you know what agency they work with within California government, and that could be cities, county, state, you could type their name in here, their last name, and like maybe even put the most recent year to filter out the results, and find out their first name, find out their salary, find out their rank, find out what their previous ranks have been, what previous teams they've been on. So it's a really helpful tool when you're trying to like document an officer that has done something wrong, and you want to be able to identify him better, or her, or them, I guess. So the next section is when you're cop watching, the do's and don'ts. I'm going to start with the do's. And you do as much as you can. You might not be able to get all this information, but you do as much as you can. The first is you want to get the badge number, their agency. So if they're with SAC Sheriff or SAC PD, and their name. I know if somebody calls me and says the police came into my home and they kicked the door in and they rubbed on my butt and then they left and didn't say anything, the first thing I'm going to say is, what agency was it? Was it SAC PD or SAC Sheriff? Because that's going to help me know how I can fight for them, because they all act differently. But then also, are you in the county? If somebody doesn't know the agency, then if you can't get the agency, if you're in an area of town that has white signs and you're in the county, and that jurisdiction is usually the sheriff department, or an agency that's branched off of the sheriff department. So like Citrus Heights Police or Rancho Cordova Police, those are ex-sheriff. Like they didn't used to exist. It was just sheriff, and then the sheriff made their own branch. So, but if you're in the areas that have green street signs, then you're in the city jurisdiction, and that will be Sacramento Police Department jurisdiction. You've got places like, I'll say Oak Park from Broadway South to 12th Avenue, and from Martin Luther King to, I'll say, Franklin or 33rd. That square area is policed by, that jurisdiction is California Highway Patrol runs through there. SAC PD, that's their main jurisdiction, but SAC Sheriff is often in there, and there's a really blurry line in Oak Park when it comes to SAC Sheriff and SAC PD. So sometimes it may be either of those agencies in that area. And then you also have the police that work the McGeorge School of Law. They often come out into the area that's not the McGeorge School of Law and police the people. And then you have UC Davis, which is the hospital over there, but they have their own police department, and I've seen them pull people over all the way so there's UC Davis, it is south of Broadway. I'm sorry. Ooh, my directions are messed up, but it's on one side of Broadway. If you go to the other side of Broadway and go down further, which is kind of pretty far down to Touch a Class, which is a bar that's been there forever. I've seen UC Davis police pull someone over at that bar. So they definitely over exercise their abilities to do stuff. When I called in about that, they tried to say that that California is their jurisdiction because they are with the UC of California, University of California. So that's how they manipulated that. But some places are a little bit more hard. So it's just important to know exactly who you're dealing with. That way you know how to go further if you need to, or how to find somebody that's been, kidnapped by the police if you need to. The next is you video document the incident and then write a narrative. So going live is preferred, but sometimes your phone might get cut off, or sometimes you may not have a good signal. And so at that point, you may just want to use your video to record. They don't know either way what you're doing. Going live, the benefit of that is if you're going live on social media, then all your friends see it and you can put out a call and say, hey, come join me. I'm by myself. Come keep me safe and let's do this together. And we need more eyes on this. Let's continue to document this together. So that's the benefits of going live. But if you don't have that privilege, then video record it. And as you're video recording it or going live, you want to consistently say where you're at, what's going on, what you know so far, what's happened. If you're live, people are going to be constantly getting on your live, maybe in the middle after you've already said that. As people keep getting on, you're going to repeat. I'm on the corner of Franklin and Florin. I'm at the Shell gas station. I came over here because I saw that the police pulled guns out on a young Black man, and now they have him in the back of the police car. It is 12:15 in the afternoon. And then everything that you see that happens, document it. They're now searching the vehicle. Now they're talking to the person that's detained. Now they're releasing him. Now they've torn up his dashboard. Like, those are the things that you want to document. And if you're saying it, or even you want to get their car numbers, it's Police Sac PD, car number 12413. Officer, I'm going to say Hart because Beth is in here. Officer Hart, badge number 538. Say these things out loud, because if you rely on yourself to remember it, you're going to be like, dang, I wish I would have said it out loud. You could always go back to your video and then listen to it again, and get that documentation. If you're able to, speak with witnesses and get their contact information. When police do things that they know they're not supposed to do, they will always put out a narrative in the form of a press conference that gives you what happened. And a lot of times, I'll say 10 times out of 10, it's not what happened. So always talk to people if they witness something, so you could get a real narrative. And then with whatever resources you have, or if you want to rely on us as a resource or any other organization that has the ability to reach the media, then we can get out the actual narrative and press the line on the narrative that the police put out. So that's why it's so important to speak to people if you have the ability to do that. It says photograph and document injuries. If you're able to do that, then do that. When you're going live, if you're able to just zoom in on something, if there's blood somewhere, or, if anything seems like it needs to be documented that's medical, you could zoom in and document it by saying his lip is bleeding, or his jaw is crooked, or his arm is dislocated, and then zoom in on it so that later on you could take screenshots of whatever it is that you videoed. Because sometimes it's not possible to video and take a picture at the same time. Keep calm. Use polite language. I'm going to speak to that too. Move slow and stay in visibility so that you don't escalate the situation by surprising somebody. So keep calm is important. There are some people where we pull out our cameras and they pull it out too, and they start yelling at the police, and they're just like, and they're screaming to where you get like discombobulated in your brain. Like, they're constantly yelling at the police and it's almost very distracting. That's going to hurt the person that you're watching. That's going to make this officer so frustrated that if they don't take it out on you, they're going to take it out on them. And then also it's distracting and it's deterring whatever's supposed to be happening. Use polite language. So some people don't do that, especially when emotions are happening. Like I've seen a lot of stuff happen recently where people are cop watching and they're screaming and cussing and they're calling the officers little bitches and they're doing all kinds of things. And it's like, okay, if you feel that way, then take that chance if you want to. I've done it before. I've been in situations where the police have made me super angry. I just watched them beat one of my friends and then like take them off, kidnap them. And so I was just like, it's trauma. It's a trauma response. A lot of times it's a trauma response. And sometimes you can't control that. But then there's times where I am polite to them, but it is sarcastic usually. And they know that and they do the same thing back to me. But it's best just to not talk to them if you don't have to, unless you're asking for their name and badge number. And if you don't want to be polite, just don't be rude. Just always gauge the situation though. If you feel like you need to be rude, then be rude, but gauge the situation. Do whatever you want to do. Just gauge the situation and make sure that you stay safe. So there is a bill that passed, and this is outdated. It says California Info Act. But there's SB 1421 that passed, and that allows you to get records of police officers. And this is one of those things where, yeah, the law exists. It just depends who you are when you ask. I know when we've asked for stuff, we don't get it. But when lawyers ask for it, they get it. But if you get the information that you need, then you'll find a way to get it, whether it's through an organization or through an attorney. But you can request records on those officers or records on that situation based on that new law. And then even if it isn't within the limits of that law, you could still put in a request. It just may or may not get responded to, but it does not hurt to put in a request. Another thing that we do or we advise people to do if it's SAC PD that is harassing you or has done something to you is to file a complaint with the Office of Public Safety and Accountability. That office is part of the system, so we don't expect them to fix the problem, but it definitely puts the documentation into the record for that officer that's involved. It puts documentation into their system for, at the end of the year, they do assessments of all the complaints that they've gotten in, so you could see the numbers. And if a lot of times people don't know that they can put in those complaints, and so these numbers, they brag about these small numbers while there's huge incidents happening in the street. But like in the hood, folks don't know when they get pulled over for tinted windows and then illegally searched that they can file a complaint about that. And so they don't do that. Office of Public Safety and Accountability. And they call it OPSA for short. So that might help you remember it, OPSA. But yeah, they're a resource that we use just for documentation. Because I know at the end of the year, one time they said, we didn't have that many complaints this year. That means our police are doing better. And it's like, no, you like harass people all year long. You over policed Oak Park and nobody knows that they have that ability. And sometimes they just don't want to do it because they don't feel like it's going to do anything. But it does serve a purpose. It's just not going to be the fix. And we can't rely on them to fix what they're doing or even call themselves out. So what don't do? Don't bring weapons or drugs when you go to cop watch. It seems like nothing, but like some people carry pocket knives all the time. That's just part of their attire. I know in my purse, I have a stun gun and I have pepper spray. That would be considered a weapon if they wanted to look through my purse. So, but drugs, yeah, that's common sense. I feel like you're not going to bring something that's going to get you locked up. But weapons, they can use it to their favor. If, legally you're allowed to carry a knife if it's a certain size, but they can easily twist that up and just say you charged at them with your knife, so they killed you if you got one on you, Don't drink or use drugs before going out to, if you know that you've been drinking, don't drive out to go cop watch. Um, don't run or move suddenly while cop watching. And I've had this thing happen before where somebody doesn't want to be videotaped. And that's hard because you know that you're trying to help them out. But if they insist, then don't record them. But you can still watch.
The police, really?
Huh? Oh, did you say something? Somebody?
You don't have to watch if the police say not to touch, not to film them, you have to turn your phone off?
Oh, no. I'm saying if the person that's being attacked says that they
Oh.
don't want to be videotaped, then like what I'll do when that happens is I'll tell them I'm doing this to make sure that you're safe. Is it okay if I continue to video you? I just want to make sure you're safe. And if they keep saying no, then you do what they want. But you still stay there and you watch them to make sure, because just your presence is a form of protection.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And sometimes it's hard to tell. I know I just told you the incident when I said that I'm on Franklin and Fruit Ridge, or Franklin and Florin, I'm at Shell gas station. That was an actual real thing. And when that young Black man, he was in the back of the car, it was hard to tell if he was embarrassed or not because his head was kind of down. And so I felt a little bad watching him, but then when he got out, he was just like, thank you so much for watching. So definitely wait till they tell you not to watch them before you stop. Don't assume that they don't want it. Also, don't escalate the situation. And then don't interfere with police activity. And then the last one is don't conceal your hands. Let's see here. Now, there's two ways of cop watching. There's people that, like, you're driving down the street and you see it happening, so you pull over, and like that's to the extent that you cop watch, right? And then there's some people that do it intentionally. So they either listen to a police scanner to see when they need to go pull up somewhere, or even better, which we're trying to build this eventually at some point, is having teams of people that patrol areas at certain hours of the day, certain days of the week when we know that there's a lot of police activity, just so that there's a constant presence of us out there, and that the police know that, and so that they move so that they're thinking about that while they do everything that they do in the middle of the night in, Valley High or somewhere that's always over policed. So those three types, no matter what type of cop watch you are, it is important to download the scanner apps. I'm going to try to show you which ones I use. So let's see if I can do this. So it's kind of blurry, huh? Will it focus? Well, there's this one right here. That's the one I use the most, and it's called, where'd it go? Okay, it's called Police Scanner Plus. And I think it's only available on iPhones. But if it isn't, I mean, if it's not available on an Android and you have an Android, then there's 5-0 radio. I use those two consistently. And so there's times where someone will say, like, we heard tons of police just drive past my house and I live in South Sacramento. Um, what's going on? We turn on the scanner and the scanner will have channels like South Sacramento Command, Central Command, North Command, or South Sacramento Command and Sacramento Sheriff South. And so based on where that person is or where they saw whatever happened, then you pull up that scanner and you try to listen. Lately, it seems like they may have channels that we don't have access to because sometimes we hear something is going on and it sounds like a war outside and we still can't find any information in the scanner. But it is helpful to have that. There's been a lot of times where we hear what's going on and where people are at, and we've been able to pull up to make sure that they're safe. One thing that I do want to stress is to not call the police ever, if possible. The best thing to do would be to build a support system if you're able to, for situations where you might need the police. And that sounds like a huge thing to build a support system, but it really isn't. Just find some folks that you know would pull up for you if there was an emergency situation. Even if you're getting into cop watching, you're going to build with people that want to cop watch as well, especially if they see you doing it on your Facebook page or wherever it is that you social media. Then you'll have people that are interested in it, and that's a way to build a support system. And so if there's ever a chance that you may need to call the police, call on the people that have this experience. It's just really important. Part of why I do the trainings is because I want to build, like, I want us all to cop watch. So many people drive by. There's been times where I'm at a gas station and something huge is happening and somebody's being completely traumatized and impacted. And then you've got people that are just going in and out of the gas station like nothing is happening. And we can't be in a world like that. Like, we can't continue to be like that with our people. So it's important for us to look out for each other. It doesn't matter what race the person is that's being traumatized or attacked by police, or, if they're, no matter what, whatever they look like, you want to watch and ensure their safety. Even if they broke a million laws and they look like they're about to, turn something up, like, you still want to watch and ensure that they're given their civil rights. And then you might end up witnessing something that happened that other people may need to see the video of so that we can know the truth about it. Um, but let's go through your questions. Are you there still, Pasha? And I'm gonna personally go to gallery view now so I can see everybody.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. So we're gonna go through your questions to see if I answered them all. And if I didn't, then I'm gonna try to answer it. If I didn't and I don't know the answer, then I'm gonna try to get you the answer or get you to who would have the answer. Do you have the first question, Pasha?
Courtney wanted to know how to be safe while cop watching and what are your rights when doing so.
Okay, so
Courtney, did you kind of feel like, is
yeah,
Courtney still here?
yeah, Courtney's right. Yeah. Did we answer your questions tonight, Courtney? Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, what's the next one?
And then Jen V wanted to know about documentation, like details of the event and other than talking and filming.
Oh, okay. Wait, Gen V. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I looked dead at you and then that's what happens when you're delirious. So did we answer your question or do you?
No, you did. A lot of detail. Thank you very much.
All right, cool.
All right. And now Beth Hart wanted to know, what are my rights when cop watching?
You good, Beth? Okay, cool. Thank you. And then Nicole.
All right. Yeah.
So go for tonight.
Nicole wanted to know. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
No, it's fine. She wanted to make sure she learned how to talk to cops when cop watching, and she also made note that she had zero interaction with police in her life.
Okay. So Nicole, do you feel like I answered your questions tonight?
Yeah, I definitely do. And I've been watching the other cop watching videos also to get a handle on it. So thank you.
When you watch other cop watching videos, whose videos are you watching, if you remember?
I've seen yours, I've seen Misty's, I've seen a couple of citizen videos from other cities. And the styles are a little different depending on the situation. Misty is someone who's like, she's on the move. She's walking. I can't match her pace. You know, she's like, she's going around the block and making sure she finds something. You do that too. You know, you find a way to get in and kind of run up on things. With Misty, she's pretty straightforward. You know, she's just like, officer, what's your name? What's your badge number? And she gets a lot of like pretty basic responses back. So, I mean, and not basic the bad way, but just like pretty
No.
straightforward responses back. They're just like, you can tell that they're like a little annoyed, but you can also see that they're trying to be polite, which I think is interesting. And I wonder if that's different when there are white women, you know, doing the cop watching versus Black women doing the cop watching.
That's a good point to make.
Yeah, you know, I mean, this is the part of the reason I want to do this training is because this is a huge place where we can use our privilege for good. You know, we can definitely make things safer just by standing there, which is ridiculous. But if it's something we can do, we should be doing it. And I have not been actively cop watching because I was over in Arden and we weren't really getting calls over there. Until there was, you know, massive problems. Anyway, that's enough time for me.
No, that was good though. That's good. And that's true. How you've observed Misty and how she almost demands it from them. And I do the same thing. And I feel like I have certain privileges that are not white women privileges at all, but they are name recognition privileges. So when I'm out there with the police, I will say things that most people will not be able to say. Or I've had people call me for help because police are in front of their house and they're treating them badly. And it'll be Black women that are out there. And then when I show up, I'm talking to these cops like I'm their mom, and I don't do it on purpose. It just comes out like that. I get very authoritative with them and they let me. And so I know that there's privilege with the police in different situations and that they treat Black women, especially, and Black men, especially, a lot worse, or almost like you're lucky that I'm not killing you. Like they have that attitude. Like, don't question me, boy, type attitude. So that's a real thing. Okay. What's the next question?
Jose would like to know how to adequately respond to a cop telling you to stop recording.
Jose, do you feel like I answered your question tonight?
Yeah, for the most part, just, keep your distance. And I heard some other things that also help of what to say. But yeah.
Yeah, gauge the situation, push the line if you feel comfortable doing it, because you know it's your right. But if you feel like, because clearly you're not white, so you may not have the same privileges as somebody that is white would have. So just gauge that. And if you don't feel safe, then do whatever feels safe.
And looks like Julie wanted a general overview of everything.
Oh, you good, Julie? Okay, I see your thumb.
Okay. Is Jessica still here? Because she's grayed out. So is Jessica gone?
I guess so. Somebody did leave.
Looks like Jessica might be gone.
Okay, what was their question?
Jessica's question was, they wanted and general overview over everything, and also wondering how community can get started with creating mutual aid networks that can replace cops.
That's a beautiful question. So yeah, that's something that we wanted to, we started trying to do a cop watch group. And so the goal was to start off small in one community, do it Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. with 2 shifts during those hours of at least 2 people to a vehicle that stay in certain areas or this one specific area and follow whatever the police are doing. Because those were the times when we see the most harassment. And so the most secrecy of that harassment, like nobody knows what's happening, but it's happening. We really wanted to get the people that were the most impacted to be in that space, but it's really, there's a balance because it's really hard for folks that have been impacted to do things like that. They don't feel like powerful enough yet to be empowered to do those things. So it was hard to get people to do that. And then also one of the things that we worried about is, and I guess this would be more so in the daytime than the nighttime, but having people that don't look like they belong in that neighborhood with cameras looking at people that are Black, with police harassment. So it's a hard, in the daytime, I feel like that's okay. I'm sorry. in the daytime, I feel like that would not be as okay than at the night when you're in a car and you're just driving through, because you're not out on the street standing in the, you know, broad daylight. So there's different things that we have to weigh. And then we want to make sure that the people that are leading this are the most impacted. They're the ones that are always being harassed, formerly incarcerated, folks that, you know, have experienced trauma by the police, so that they know what it looks like, what it feels like, and how important it is for folks to be safe. So that's something that it's not, we're not building that right now, but it's definitely something that I want to work toward, and other groups should work toward it. Right now, I think what's put in place is we have a couple of cop watch organizations in Sacramento, and they put the call out on social media and people pull up. And so that works. But what ends up happening is it only usually happens in activist spaces instead of Black and brown communities where it's needed so much more. So I hope I answered their question, because they're not here. So, okay, what's the next one?
Robin would like to know, what's the best way to disturb police violence when seeing it? Beyond filming and getting people's attention, how to stop them from killing?
Did I answer that, or do you want to elaborate on that, Robin?
Yeah. So like in the case of George Floyd, there was a bunch of people filming his death, but nobody stopped his death. You know what I mean? Like, what if somebody is in a situation where they're dying? Is there any tips you have on? Because I'm personally willing to get arrested if it saves somebody's life. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I feel you. I just don't want you to get killed either. So like when it comes to fighting the police, like if you, and this is probably something that I shouldn't be talking about in Zoom, but I'm going to answer you anyway, because I don't give a fuck. When it comes to doing something where you're putting yourself in a situation where you could be shot or killed by law enforcement, and then they'll get away with it, and then that other person might be dead too, so we just lost 2 people for no reason, you want to be way deeper than them. I know that there's been videos that have come out in Portland where the folks were so deep that they had 2 cars of police that were 2 SUVs with 2 officers in each SUV. And the people were deep enough to be like, get the fuck out of here, get out of here. And the police ended up leaving. And I know there's been situations where we tell the police to get out of here. And we'll be angry and causing a ruckus and they leave, but then somebody else's life isn't at risk in those points, in those times. So the only thing that I can think of is you would just need to have so many people that they are outnumbered. In Sacramento, though, whenever we are outnumbering them, they tend to come back and outnumber us. So that's really risky. The only thing I could think that would
Tough question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a tough question. I only thought of it because somebody else thought of it, you know, and I thought that they had a good point. So I was like, maybe I can get some more insight.
That's a good question. And it's sad because I probably would risk things too. If I saw someone like physically dying in front of me, it wouldn't even be a thought. Like I probably wouldn't process it and be logical about it. I'd probably just be like, what the fuck are you doing? Like I'd probably lose it and probably get hurt or killed as well. So yeah, and it's really hard, especially in SAC, because SAC, they're very strategic. They try to out strategize us, you know what I mean? So, and they're all hella deep. They're always so deep.
You know, I've thought about that too, actually, and I had a different idea, which I don't know if it's just stupid, but especially because I'm not a fighter, you know, like my talent is my presence. Is to like, honestly, I think I would fall to my knees and beg. Like that would be my go-to for the officers, and hopefully that would get filmed, because I think that would be the best that I could do. You know, I can't beat off an officer. Oh, I'm really sorry I said it that way. I cannot beat an officer. I will not beat off an officer.
Yeah.
But you know, there's a positive way to weaponize tears, and I think that would be the best thing in my mind that I could do. But I think it's probably going to be a little different for everybody what you feel like you can bring to that party. You know, a fat crying middle-aged white lady is going to draw a different kind of attention than a screaming Karen, and but it's still going to be attention. I would think. It's a theory.
Me personally, I would try to get media there because I feel like a media presence always de-escalates a situation. But that's a privilege that I have too. So, but I know that there's been times where media has worked with me to like make it look like they're not there to make something happen, and then they pull up like out of the bushes, and so they'll work with the people to get that information out. You know, if you've got a good reporter or a good rapport with the reporter, but I think media attention will do that as well. Because they're being watched and they know it at that point. All right, what's the next one?
Janet would like to learn how to be mentally prepared for any interaction with police or happening onto a situation where she might be witness to something that the police are doing to or with a citizen.
So how to mentally prepare, you're saying, for that type of situation?
Yes, because I'm similar to Nicole. I have basically zero experience with police, but there was one instance where I was driving from one place to another, and the Elk Grove police were there, and there was a man down on the ditch in a bicycle, and I was at a stop sign at a red light, and I'm like, well, what's going on? And then the cops really angrily said, well, just keep going, just keep going. So, you know, I don't know whatever did happen, but it makes me think. And that's part of why I want to be in this training, because I don't have any experience with police. And so this meeting in class is a really good first step. So I really thank you for presenting it, and Beth for inviting me.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's just that's a personal, you have to learn about how you feel around them first. And then based on how you feel around them, then you have to learn what you might need to do to not like to either continue to feel that way or not feel that way. So if you get anxiety around the police, then you may need to take deep breaths, or you might need to call other people to come out with you. If I was in that situation with you in Elk Grove and the officer said, just keep going, because that's an authoritative way of telling you not to pay attention to what they're doing. And they're saying it in a way as if they know they're doing something wrong and they don't want you to look at it, but they're saying it with authority. So you feel like what they're saying is the right, like that's what I'm supposed to do. I would actually pull over. I would have probably pulled over and came out with my camera and been like, I'm just observing, officer. And I would have stayed at a distance, and they could be agitated all they want. But if someone's laying in a ditch with a bike, I do not want them to get killed. And like, to me, that's like the biggest priority. But personally, if you have any type of like situations, like, I don't want to use the word mental health because I don't want to say that it's a mental health situation, but if you get any type of reaction to police interaction with community that's it impacts you mentally, then you might have to figure out how to ground yourself during those situations, or even ground yourself before you even get out of your car. Like you might need to take a deep breath and be like, okay, I'm gonna adjust for this moment right now. Because I get anxiety too. When I go to cop watch, I'll feel a little bit of anxiety and nervousness, but my personality personally is like, fuck that, get out there, get out there. So I push through it, but everybody handles that differently. And so I think that's a personal thing. I would try it once and just see how you feel. And then if whatever you feel like, come back to Beth or me and tell me, and then we'll talk about that.
Okay, and then, so Tanya, when you first started police watching, were you more nervous then than you are now? Does your experience kind of help give you more confidence or competence in the task, do you feel?
It depends on the agency. So being in front of the DA's office for a year and seeing the same police officers every day and getting to know their personalities and how they interacted with me gave me a lot of confidence when I go out and I watch SAC PD. But when it comes to SAC Sheriff, I don't know any of those officers or deputies. And I know that they're like Alabama, you know what I mean? Like their blatant racism is like Alabama, and that they're not transparent. So if anything happens to me, I know that nobody will ever find out what happened. Nothing will ever, you know what I mean? So, and I know if I go in the jail, I'm gonna be like probably raped and murdered. So I don't want to go in the jail. When before I didn't mind going into the jail. Like I'll risk arrest all day. But if I go into a jail where all of them know my name and they hate me, I know that I'm gonna be terrorized. So that's changed, and that kind of shapes how I feel when I cop watch and how aggressive or non-aggressive I am when I cop watch.
Because that's unfortunately the culture that we have in the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department now.
It's been like,
And
yeah. Our sheriff
yeah,
has personally written me letters that have like denounced me, and I've sued him. So he hates me. I know he's waiting for me to get in there. But in the beginning, my very first protest, I was greeted by Department of Homeland Security. And that was my first experience with police. I hadn't even been out in the streets yet or done anything, and they were already surveilling me. So they knew
what
about
happened?
it. So I had an event. It was for Mike Brown. It wasn't even for somebody in Sacramento. Mike, we were having a protest in solidarity with Ferguson for Mike Brown, and not that many people came out. And we had it at the Matsui courthouse. And so when I got there, they had the cones already placed out for us. They said, you can go on these side of the cones, but not on this side of the cones. If you step on these steps, you'll be charged with a federal offense, like all these things. And he handed me this thing, and it was just really weird because he knew my first name and I was not organizing under my name. I was organizing under Insight. And the organization was not known yet. It was not public. It was not filed. Like there was nothing about it that linked it to me. So I knew that surveillance was happening at a federal level because it was Department of Homeland Security.
Sheriff Jones is a big Trumper, right? So he's continued the narrative of BLM being terrorists. So there are people who, a lot of people locally who legitimately believe that Tanya is a terrorist because they told them so.
Yeah, well, this is what we were Insight. So we weren't even BLM Sacramento yet. And I was actually working by myself. I did not have a group with me yet. And Scott Jones didn't know who I was yet, as far as I know. But I don't know. I just think that they followed it and they learned what they needed to learn to find out who I was. So now my cat is coughing at the end of this. Just ignore her, please. Nicole's gonna make a sad face, make me feel bad. Anyways, you okay, Leo? Okay.
Okay.
Cats are gross, y'all, just so you know.
I remember when I first started paying attention to PLM, there was the police, SAC police actually had a Facebook group that was called Friends of SAC Police or something like that.
SAC
And
PD Underground. But I don't think it was SAC PD, to be honest. I think it was the sheriff that had that page, to be honest. Because he's the most social media, like he stays on social media. But yeah, there was a SAC PD Underground. But yeah, either way, how I felt then to now, I get entertained by it sometimes, how they treat me or how they respond to me. And so that kind of moves how I move with them. But then sometimes it's scary because something will happen at my house, or, I'll see that they're actually coming into spaces where I'm not doing activism or I'm just living, and I have those experiences. So it's always different, but I always do what I got to do still, just because it's important. Like to me being scared because of whatever is not as important as making sure that somebody does not get killed. And there's been so many close calls that have been prevented by folks being out and watching, like literally, like I can name 3 calls where someone probably would have gotten killed if we had not been out there. I'm gonna give one story before we go to the next question.
Okay.
I got a call early in the morning when I used to work for Apple. Somebody had said, my husband, he's got mental health issues. This is the anniversary of his mother's death. He always loses it at this time. He's in his car. He's locked in his car, and there's 12 police officers with guns pulled out on him. I need someone out here now. I lived in South Sacramento. He was in North Sacramento. I was going to work. I called my friend/mentor Danielle Williams at the time. She called Deborah Cummings, who Deborah Cummings lives in the Heights. So Deborah went out there immediately with her phone and watched. And they had it taped off so nobody could get close. And Deborah went live. And when Deborah went live, 48 people joined her in the morning to go live. And everybody was out there with their live streams. And they were yelling and telling the police that they need to put their guns down because he's not a threat. Eventually, the cops put their guns down and pulled out their tasers. They eventually broke the window and got the man out of the car, and they got him to a mental health facility instead of to a jail. And so he never was charged with anything because all he was doing was hitting the air. But if they had not been there, he could have probably been killed because they were ready to do that. Another instance is when we heard a commotion in Meadowview, and it was right after Stephon Clark had been killed. We went out to Meadowview. It was in the middle of the night. They were supposed to be using less lethal forms of force, but they all had their guns pulled out facing houses because they were going into each yard looking for this young man who had just wrecked his car for whatever reason. And maybe he broke a law, I don't know. But they looked for him, and I walked past all of the officers and I said, less lethal forms of force, less lethal forms of force. I said it over and over. And so one of their sergeants ended up saying, okay, put your gun away, take out this. And so they replaced what they had out. And when they found him, he was hiding in a garbage can, and he was able to walk out and go to jail. And they said, why were you hiding? And he was like, I was scared, and it's like, he probably would have been killed because they were ready to shoot him. So it's just situations like that. I think of those things and they make me scared for people that are out there in the streets that are scared for themselves. So I'll go on to the next question now.
Thank you.
All right, the next question is from Nicholas. He wants to know the safest way to cop watch without putting the person you're trying to help in danger, and what are we allowed to record?
Did I answer your questions tonight, Nicholas?
Yeah, I think that you did. And actually, like, upon listening to other answers and other questions, I was wondering if there were any efforts to archive this footage, because I know that with the protests and with certain Black Zebra footage has been taken down off of Facebook, and a lot of the Facebook lives that some friends have posted when they've been cop watching in the past have been removed. So I was wondering if there was like anybody that's been trying to archive it. I don't have the server capacity, obviously, to handle something like that, but if that's something that somebody's doing, it'd be really great to have somewhere where we could send our files just in case, the cops do come in and raid your shit and take your stuff and delete whatever they want to delete. Like, I don't know what people are capable of, but I'm also very paranoid, so I think about things like this.
Paranoid. So that's a good question, because we're in the process of doing a lot of things, and one of them is to get land and build a house on it and have space for community in that. And part of that space is going to have servers and things like that. We may invest in that sooner than later, just because it is so important. I know one thing I do personally is I save all my videos. So when you go live, you get the option to save your video before you share it. I do save all my videos, and I do keep them in a secure place, in multiple secure places, so that I can access them no matter what happens. I don't have the capacity to hold everybody's videos, but everybody has the capacity to hold their own videos and keep them in secure places. But we are going to work on getting storage space. I don't know if we'll have the ability to hold everybody's videos, because that probably is lots of money. But
Sure.
I think it's a good idea for everybody to figure out how to hold their stuff in safe spaces, not even on internet spaces. Like, it could just be inside some type of physical thing, like a hard drive or something that you keep somewhere locked away. But yeah, I think it's important to keep all of your stuff until whenever we get to a point where we're able to actually have shifts. Then that documentation is what we'll be trying to document and save as much stuff as possible. But if you ever don't have space to save something that you've seen and you want to keep it, always feel free to hit me up, and I'll find a place to save it, and then suggest where you could save it so that we both have a copy of it.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time and energy, and have a wonderful night. Otherwise,
I have one question real quick too.
All right.
That was my friend Corey. Sorry. You had said that they can only pat you down, that they can't go into your pockets. Now, what is, like, if they feel something that they think is like drugs or a gun or something, are they then allowed to go into your pockets, or how does that work?
Yeah, if they feel a gun, then that would be probable, and so then they're allowed to put their hands in your pockets.
But it's only for a gun, or
Well,
is
no,
it?
I use the gun as an example. They
Yeah,
can,
okay.
You know, they're
problem,
gonna, if they want to violate that, they're gonna feel, they could feel a pen and say it's a gun.
Yeah.
And say that
Yeah.
that was their probable cause if they really want to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. Okay,
And-
thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And like I said earlier, these are all what they're supposed to do, but it definitely does not mean that's what they're gonna do.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, what's the next question?
Chris would like to know how to protect others and herself, to know her rights when cop watching and the rights of others.
Oh, there you are. I'm
Here I am.
did I answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, like you did. Thank you. Thank you very much.
No problem. And then
All right, Nikki wants, go ahead.
no, I just said, what's the next question?
You ready?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Nikki would like to know how to handle when unhoused people want or need to call the cops on each other.
Ooh wee.
That's a good question.
That is a good question. Nikki, do you know, why am I drawing a blank? I think it's, hold up.
If you
Crystal.
don't mind, I only ask because this happened to come up when I was cop watching, and someone said, "Can you call the police or mental health on this individual who was clearly acting out?" And so I just so it can come up when someone, when you're out cop watching, where someone asks you for help, when they want money or they want you to call the police, or they're experiencing violence themselves, that's why I bring it up.
Yeah, I'm gonna help you with that because so there's two things I'm gonna answer for you, and I'm also trying to kill time while I pull up this resource that we have. But Crystal Rose Sanchez on Facebook, I would follow her or friend her because she's really a big advocate in the homeless community. She's like the biggest advocate that I know. She knows all the answers to all the things. And she does not call the police or rely on police. There are other, and I'm looking at this list right now, hold on. There are alternatives when it's a mental health situation. And I'm gonna pull out, because we have a resource list that we've somewhat vetted. What's important for us when we vet things is we want to call places that are not going to call the police, and we want to make sure that the places that we call do not have an anti-Black sentiment, so they don't treat people rudely because they're Black. Mental Health First is by APTP. They're a crisis response team. That's one organization that does that. That's domestic violence, youth service support. That's the only one I'm
What I'm
seeing that I
hearing you
have.
say is don't call the police. Like, don't fall for it.
Nope. Because a lot of the people that we fight for that have been killed were having a mental health crisis when they were killed. And it allows the police to have an excuse to kill them. And sometimes that mental health issue may be by drugs. And so that gives them a reason to like vilify them when they've killed them, instead of getting them help with drugs or with mental health issues. So I would never call the police, but I would contact an alternative. And the only one that I can put my finger to right now is the one, the APTP. There's also a harm reduction center on Stockton Boulevard. I think they have a response team, but they deal with people that are either, addicted to any type of substance, but they do have a response team and they don't call the police, and they're at 2800 Stockton Boulevard. And if you just look up harm reduction services, you can get all their details, but they're an alternative to call. All right, what's the next question?
Selena would like to know how to respond when police officers will not tell you why someone is being detained or searched.
Is Selena in here? Oh, there you are. Yeah. So did I answer you do you think?
And I honestly, this was more in terms of like an unhoused person was living nearby my apartment. And so all of a sudden there were just police officers coming to search him for no apparent reason. And they used the reasoning of, it's for his privacy that we're not allowed to tell you. Like we would give you the same sort of
They've done that.
respect was actually what they said. And I didn't know how, like I can also see that, but it didn't seem like they had
Seemed
any
like that they
reason.
were gaslighting you. They were lying to you. They've done that with me before, where they say that I'm violating the person's privacy because I'm watching them, and I don't know everything that happened, and I need to just go away. And I've had that happen before, and I insist in that moment. It's like all the other times that people ask, how do I do this if they don't do this? You gauge your situation and how far you want to push it, or how comfortable you feel pushing it. If you are a white woman, then you have more privilege to go a little bit further. But if you start feeling like it's a threat to you, or you're not going to be safe, then I would just stand back and just watch and be eyes on the situation.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
No problem. And then what's the next one?
Jose wants to know, how far does that search go? I'm not sure what Jose
Someone
was referring
earlier
to.
asked something along the same lines, and it got answered. It was just a like, when are they allowed to search your pockets? Because I know there have been cases where they're allowed to, and they'll abuse like probable cause to do it.
Right.
So yeah, my question's been answered on that. Thanks.
All right, perfect. Thank you. All right.
All right. Courtney wants to know, what are your rights when arrested again?
Okay, so are you asking like what rights do you have when you're being arrested?
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay. So I think it's like that one clause that they say, they don't say it anymore, but they used to have to say it, like you have the right, what is it? You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to an attorney.
Your Miranda rights?
Yeah, your Miranda rights.
The Miranda rights?
Yes, your Miranda rights. So you have a right to attorney. If you don't have one could be appointed to you. And that's when you're arrested. So your rights get very minimal when you are arrested. When you're in the system, you lose a lot of your rights. But when you're being detained, and then also you have the right, what I had said in the training is you have the right to know why you're being arrested. Let me pull up this. I don't want to miss nothing. Hold up. Give me 1 second. So they need to be arresting you with evidence. Probable cause is, yeah, like they always say it's stable information, but they can manipulate it really easy because it's probable. So they always say it's objective, but it's very subjective. And you have the right to know when you're being arrested, and you have the right to appear before a judge. If you get those rights, that's not always promised. So, all right, what was the next? Did I answer your question, Courtney? Okay. And what's the next question?
Chris would like to know, can they search your vehicle when you are being detained?
If they have a warrant. Or if they have probable cause. So if this was a state where weed is illegal and they smell weed, then that would be probable cause. If you are on probation or parole, then you could be searched without a warrant or probable cause. Does that answer you? Okay. All right. What's the next question?
And then Jose said, like just patting you down. I'm not exactly sure what that's in reference to.
I think Jose is talking about the original, like the search and the frisk and going into your pockets and patting you down. So I think it's all related.
And then I think we already answered this question for Nicholas. If they feel something when they pat you down, can they then go into your pockets?
Okay. All right. So I think I answered that. What's the next one?
Courtney wanted to know, what is an infraction again?
So it results in usually just a fine, but it's small, like a traffic stop or certain types of traffic stops, jaywalking, small things that don't involve jail time. Okay. And then what's the next one?
Let's see. Gen V wanted to know office name. I think, were you referring to the transportation or transparentcalifornia.com maybe?
Oh yeah, the OPSA, when I did Office of Public Safety and Accountability, I think I read that while I was saying it, so I repeated it. Okay.
And then Courtney wanted to know, what is the 8th Amendment?
Protection from excessive bail and cruel and unusual punishment. And I'm sure there's more language in that. So you could always, let me pull it up real quick. So the 8th Amendment to the United States Constitution states that excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. This amendment prohibits the federal government from imposing unduly harsh penalties on criminal defendants, either as the price for obtaining, now I gotta click on the whole link, hold on. The price for obtaining pretrial release or as a punishment for crime after conviction. All right. And the next one.
And it looks like this is our last question. Robin wants to know, oh, actually just had another one pop up. Robin wants to know, or she says, I heard when you get arrested, because you have the right to remain silent, you only have to give them your legal name, birth date, and address for something. Do you know what we're required to give to them?
Let me look that up because I feel like that is not accurate, or let me see. I think right to remain silent is pertaining to not speaking until you have a lawyer present. Not in accordance with like what they need from you, but actually like don't incriminate yourself, because they will try to talk to you and incriminate you and interrogate you without a lawyer present. And that's when you have the right to remain silent. But let me, just so that I know for sure, because that's how I know that only through context. So the right to silence is a legal principle which guarantees any individual the right to refuse to answer questions from law enforcement officers or court officials. And so this can be the right to avoid self-incrimination or the right to remain silent when questioned. So I don't think it's in regards to identification, but it kind of goes along with it, to be honest. All they need is what they need. If they can get your ID and look at it, then they don't need anything else, I would think. Okay, and then is there another question?
It looks like Nikki's, I don't think this is a question, but Nikki said, she said, you can identify yourself, otherwise they can detain you for 72 hours to identify you.
Okay. I even think that there isn't a time frame, to be honest. Is that Nikki Powell?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, like I would say when you're cop watching and an officer asks for your identification or asks who you are, that's up to you if you share that. But I think you're right, Tanya, that all you would need to give is your ID.
So when you're not driving, and that's one of the things in the very beginning, I was saying that like there are certain rights that you have, but you still want to assess like how safe you want to be. So like in California, if you're not driving, you don't have to show your ID to a police officer. That is the law. But there are plenty of times where the police will ask you for it. If you say no, then you're risking getting hurt or getting killed, especially if you're Black or brown. So that's when you want to gauge whether or not it's worth it to not show your ID and show it if you need to. But same thing with cop watching. If when you're in your car, like if you're pulling up and you're in your car, then yeah, you got to show your ID or license. But if you're not, then that's a right that you have not to show it, but you still want to make sure that you do whatever's safe for you. But I think they can detain you for as long as I don't think there's a time limit on detaining, although I don't think it lasts usually a long, long time. Like like more than a day or something, just because they usually have to do other stuff. And if they're leaving with you in their car, then they're no longer detaining you, they're arresting you. If they're bringing you to like the jail to be held for 72 hours, that's an arrest. And usually misdemeanor arrests will let you out within a couple of days at the longest if you're an activist. Usually activist charges, and I'm giving you hella information right now that you didn't ask, but usually when activists are doing activist things and they go to jail, if it's on a weekday and not a Friday, then they keep you usually till around midnight or a little bit after that. But if it's on a Friday night, they'll keep you usually till Monday. Because activist charges, number one, they don't want activists in jails because we start organizing. And then number two, usually the charges don't warrant a long jail time or just a misdemeanor and a citation and go to court. But that was a lot of information that you didn't ask, so, but it's still good information. All right, what's the next one? Oh, is that the last?
That is it. That's all our questions.
Okay.
Yep.
All righty. So how y'all feel? Are you ready to get off this thing? All right, well, thank you so much. Feel free to contact us for anything that you have questions about or any concerns that you have or any information you want to share with us that you've experienced or seen or anything like that. Our email is info@blmsacramento.com. I'll type that in here real quick. And our phone number is 916-581-0061. And cop watch, please. All right, have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Tanya.
you.
Thank
And
you so
Chris,
much.
if you want to stay on and give me your email, I will send you the link to the Allies survey.